What's up, guys? I'm Alex with BFE Adventures, and today I'm going to tell you whether or not you should buy a KTM 690. Stay tuned. What is up, guys? So today I'm going to try and do a quick review and also let you know whether or not you should buy one of these bad boys. Okay, so first off, I'm just going to tell you I'm going to do a light review of it and save the more in-depth review maybe for a few weeks from now after I get some more cool footage of it and that kind of stuff. But for now, I just want to tell you some light pros and cons right out the gate and then tell you whether or not you should buy one. So if you're like me and you were perusing the internet and you are considering this class of motorcycle, then you're probably either looking at coming from a bigger ADV bike and wondering if you should get something smaller. You could be coming from a lighter, smaller dual sport or enduro bike and looking to get something potentially bigger, or you're just looking to get into the segment and you're thinking you want to stick with a middleweight bike and potentially do a little more off-roading. So I feel like those are the main categories of people looking at this bike, and so I'm going to try and keep you guys in mind while I'm discussing it. So a few of the pros and cons. Now, to be abundantly clear, this is a 2021 model. There are big changes to the 690 after 2019. So the 2019 and newer years, they have the dual counterbalanced engine. It's got a little more power. It's got a little more fuel capacity. And it's got different electronics on it. So those are like the main big differences that you would notice right out the gate. So some of the pros for it. One, the motor is a huge pro. It is so much fun. 74 horsepower in 350 pounds is an absolute riot. And I cannot overstate how much fun this motor is. The traction control system on it is incredible. It has two modes. It's basically got a street mode and an off-road mode. And the street mode is a more aggressive throttle, and the off-road mode is a less aggressive throttle. And then it also has traction control and ABS. It has ABS on both wheels or ABS completely off, and you can get an ABS dongle to have an off-road ABS that keeps the ABS to the front wheel but turns it off to the back wheel. I have yet to do that, but that is the next thing that I will be getting for this bike. The traction control modes are also different based on what mode you're in. So the traction control in street mode is a very intrusive traction control. It keeps you from spinning pretty much at all. You try and clutch up a wheelie or something, it's not going to let you do it. It is intrusive, whereas the off-road traction control is actually very good. I've ridden a lot of adventure bikes with a bunch of different traction control modes, and I will say my favorite thus far was the Africa Twin, and this traction control is better, period. It does allow you to slide the rear end. It allows you to still wheelie over obstacles, wheelie over stuff, and it only cuts in when things are really getting rowdy. So those are the main pluses to the electronic system. It is very good at cruising highway speeds. Like 70 miles an hour is where I would not want to cruise 80 for hours, but it will, I mean, comfortably. But I would say 70 is kind of the sweet spot if you're going to cruise for a while on this bike. And it does it much easier than, say, like a KTM 500. Those will do it, but not as comfortably. You know, the 450 class bikes, again, not as comfortably. The lower bikes, like I just had a WR250R, that bike will do it, but again, not as easy. This bike will cruise at 70, and if you want to pass a car, there is still plenty left to go into pass mode. So that is another pro of the bike. Overall, it is lightweight for the amount of goodies that you're getting, for the electronic system, for the amount of power and the motor. It is just an overall great package that is still extremely light for what you're getting. Now the cons from the factory, it's just a dirt bike. It does not have this fairing kit on it. The intake it sounds kind of gutless. That's just me. I'm more of a visceral person. When I ride a bike, I want to hear it. The seat is unbelievably uncomfortable. The newer ones have a higher fuel capacity, but still only 3.6 gallons. So if you're going to be going far between fuel stops, that could be a concern. Right now, I'm currently getting 44 miles to the gallon on average. I just checked it today. And, you know, at 3.6 gallons, within 120 miles, you already need to start looking for a gas station. So if you're continually, you know, 100 miles between gas stops without any riding outside of that in between, then you're going to have to look at other options. Now, there's other stuff out there, and so I'll lightly touch on that, but that'll be in the deeper review. Other cons, let's see. Other than that, I don't really have many other cons. I absolutely love this bike. Pardon me. Now, so those are the light pros and cons. So let's discuss it in relation to these other bikes that you're looking at. So I have had a bunch of adventure bikes, and all of them were bigger than this. So I can speak just overall compared to those bigger bikes. Just know that this feels like a dirt bike compared to them. It's exponentially lighter. The closest thing to it would be like a T7 or like the KTM 790, and I'm pretty sure it's over 100 pounds lighter than both of those bikes. So fully fueled up. So it is not in the same class as far as weight goes, and you will feel it immediately. That being said, it does not have the same kind of cruise ability of those. Most of those bikes offer some form of cruise control. This does not. Even with this rally kit on it, it still does not have the wind protection of any of my bigger bikes. My Africa Twin probably had the least amount of protection against the wind, and it was still twice as good as this is. So it's not going to be as comfortable, period. And I'll leave it at that. The other things, with it being smaller, there's not as many places to put things. You know, I had to add this rally kit to add, you know, navigation tower and that kind of stuff, and keep my handlebars open to put other stuff like my storage bags and that kind of stuff. With the stock intake, there's an intake underneath of this seat. I ended up putting the Raid Garage storage kit under here, so now I can pop my seat off and throw my phone in, water bottles, wallet, all that kind of stuff will all go under the seat. And so that's how I, you know, overcome that obstacle. But just know that with it being smaller, it doesn't have near as much space on it. And also with this style of bike, I feel like it's a disservice if you're going to put street tires on this thing. If so, get the SMCR. So if you're going to be cruising long distances, this is going to typically, if you ride it how I think it was intended, you're going to have more aggressive knobbies on it than a big adventure bike. And so you would just chew these off half the time. If you were going on long distance trips, you'd have the tire half gone before you got there. So that's something else to consider. A con of it that I did not speak about earlier, that will be it's like the bigger bikes in that the gearing is taller. And so it's very similar to a big bike off-road in the gearing, meaning in first gear, it doesn't want to go less than 10 miles an hour unless you're doing a lot of clutch work. So just know if you're going to get into gnarly stuff often and spend a lot of time there, it's going to wear you out. Now, a pro to this bike that I didn't say, but on this as a caveat, the clutch is a feather. It is the lightest clutch I've ever felt on any bike. It's like you're not pulling on anything. It's bizarre. So that will help in the clutch work game. But overall, compared to a big bike, as you could imagine, it gets blown around more. It's not going to cruise at 85, 90 miles an hour like a big bike would. And other than that, still going to get you to your destination. I personally would not cruise longer than 3 hours one way to go ride. And especially if I'm going there and back in the same day, I'm probably keeping it under 2 hours because this thing is only comfortable for so long. Even the concept seat is comfy, but honestly, even after 2 or 3 hours of more dedicated seated riding, it starts to get uncomfortable. So that's something to consider. Now, comparing it to the littler bikes, first off, the motor is it's going to blow those smaller bikes out of the way. The closest one to it would be, you know, the 500 class bikes. I think those are around 55 horsepower. This is 20 horsepower more than that. It does not have the same kind of pop off the bottom like a 450 or a 500 would, which is good and bad. So, you know, if you're going to clutch a wheelie up at 55 miles an hour, you're going to have to clutch it. Whereas those bigger bikes, you can just lean back and burp the front end up. So that's a little different. But overall off-road, it does feel like a pig compared to those. Now, there's the 300 class bikes and like the WR250R that I had and the KLX 300, CRF 300L. Those bikes are only about 50 pounds lighter than this, and the suspension on this is so much better, in my opinion. This still feels better off-road, other than the gearing. The gearing on those bikes is better for off-road. But as far as overall weight goes, honestly, I think this feels better just due to the suspension. Now, comparing it to like the EXC bikes and the Husky equivalent, I always forget what those are. This will feel very heavy compared to those bikes because those bikes are 100 pounds lighter than this. So that makes a huge difference. So the advantage of this bike over those is it is a little bigger and it does have storage options and it does have this rally tower option that you can upgrade to, and all of those things can make this much more streetable than those. The maintenance interval on this is incredible. I think the suggested oil change is like 6,000 miles. I would never push it that far, but that's what they say you can do. I think valve checks are 10 or 15,000. I don't remember. I guess I better look into that before I get close. Pardon me. So this is definitely more maintenance friendly than any of those smaller bikes are going to be. But if you're going to be riding aggressive off-road and you're only riding 20, 30 minutes to get there, then honestly, you're probably better off doing something on one of those bikes. If you're going to be cruising the long distance and camping or something, but doing aggressive off-road, then this is definitely a better option. Now, lastly, I'm just going to touch on the other bikes in this class that people are like, well, I'm going to save $5,000 or sometimes more than that and get like a XR650L or a DR650 or a KLR650. Well, in my opinion, this bike is better in every way, which it should be for the price tag difference. The downside would be, you know, if you get an XR, you got the Honda reliability, or the DR650, you got the Suzuki reliability that is always going to be good. But this LC4 motor has been proven for years. It's a very good motor. And overall, comparing it to those, it's more powerful, it's better suspended, the electronic system is better, it's just better. So if you have the money, then in my opinion, it's worth the upgrade. I've personally had a KLR 650. I've not personally owned a 650 XR or a DR, but I've ridden them a lot. And those bikes are great, and if that's your budget, you will be able to take those bikes anywhere that you can take this. So it's not that this is going to get you anywhere that the other ones won't. In most cases, it won't even get you there faster, but it's more fun, I will say. It's just the motor is so much better, the suspension is so much better, and if you can splurge on that, then I would say go for it. Just know that there's also really expensive upgrades to do if you're going to do that. And yeah, I'll leave it there. I'm trying to keep it short. So I hope that answers some of your questions if you're on the fence about it. I was really in between getting a T7 or this, and I ultimately decided, just due to my style of riding, it was going to be a little more aggressive off-road. It wasn't going to be many long trips. I just figured this was going to better suit my needs, and so far it seems to live up to the expectation that I was having for it. So if you have any other questions about it or comparison to any other kind of bikes, please just ask me in the comments below. Chances are I've probably ridden whatever you're asking me about, or I've owned it, and so I'd be happy to fill you in on that. Sorry, the camera's shaking. My mic receiver just fell. Anyway, yeah, so feel free to ask me any questions you got. Please subscribe to the channel. It helps me out more than you know, and it helps us grow and get the word out there for our trainings and our tours. If you'd like to go on a tour with us or do some trainings with us, check us out at bfeadventures.com. Like I said, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Take care.